Welcome to Craft Chat Chronicles, the go-to podcast for tips on crafting best-selling fiction. Here at Craft Chat Chronicles, we bring you expert interviews, insights, and tips on writing, publishing, and marketing. Join the conversation and embark on a new chapter in your writing journey. For workshops, show notes, and more information, visit jdmyall.com. That's jdmyall.com.
In Season 4, Episode 1 of Craft Chat Chronicles, we talk to New York Times best-selling author Holly Black. Holly talks writing craft, her publishing journey, the thrill of seeing her novel, The Spiderweb Chronicles, on the screen, and so much more. It's a great conversation, and we hope you stick around for it. Season 4, Episode 1 of Craft Chat Chronicles. Let's get chatty. Hi, how are you today?
I'm good.
So tell me about your life before books.
I mean, you mean like when I was really little or before I was like professionally writing?
Both. Like, what drove you to writing? Were you a kid who read all the time? What was life like for you before you became Holly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that drove me to write was really loving to read, and I think the essential writer's tragedy, right, is that you love reading, you want to write books that are like the exact thing you want to read, but you will never experience them as a reader. You will only ever experience them as a writer, as constructed things that you could, fix or change, but you will never be able to read them as books.
What do you think you did right that helped you become the published author that you are today?
Probably kept going. I think I loved doing all kinds of different writing programs when I was a kid. I was, lucky because back then we had enough funding in New Jersey that there were a couple of programs for kids where you could get out of school and spend a day learning about writing. I did a summer program at some point, which was like a little camp for writing. It was the only camp I ever went to. And I think that that stuff was really helpful because it made it seem real. And it meant that I met other people who were sort of on the same path. But I was never the best at any of these things. What I was the person who just kept working, and I think that is a huge part of, making it to a point where your work is publishable is just continuing to figure out what's wrong with it and hopefully fix it.
I love that. How has the reality of being a published author, how is that reality different than what you thought it was before you got published?
I think I imagined that being a published writer was sitting alone in a space writing. I never really thought it's a job where you talk to people. It's a job where you stand up in front of crowds of people and talk to them. I, as a socially anxious person, really was not prepared for the idea that there were, speeches involved, that there were meeting other human beings involved. Mm-hmm. And certainly back then, I truly had no idea how much of a large part social media would turn out to play in terms of how people were expected to navigate their career as writers.
So what's a typical writing day look like for you?
So I am often, especially when I'm deep in writing, I often am a person who writes a lot at night. So I will, get up in the late morning and I will sort of stumble my way to my office and often do a lot of the sort of administrative stuff that kind of comes in comes in and you don't, also don't think about it when you're imagining your career. And then I will probably do some writing in the office. And then go home and spend time with my family. And then once they go to bed, I will write for a big portion of the night. And then because there's no interruptions then, there's no, administrative stuff coming in. There's no, stuff to distract me. So I will write for a big portion of the night, then go to sleep and do it again.
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I want to be a plotter. I plot a lot. I am not great at sticking to my plans. I'm a person who like makes a plan and then I'm like, well, what could be better than this plan? How about this? And so I guess I'm constantly in a struggle against my own process.
Love that. Love that. What makes a good opening line?
I think two things, right? And one, I think we're very aware that the opening line should be intriguing, right? It should make us want to read the next line. But I think the second thing, and the thing that's really important to go along with it, is it makes a promise about what this book will give us. What is the feeling of this book? What is the texture of this book? And I think a great opening line that's super intriguing, but is not the right promise, can really do your book a disservice as people are waiting for that feeling to come again. So I think it has to do two things. It has to intrigue the reader, but it also has to make them the right promise.
Love that. Love that. One of my favorite of your books is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, because there's just tension from the beginning when she wakes up in the bathtub all the way through to the end. You're really great from start to finish in your novels. What makes good beginnings? Like, what makes a good start, a good first chapter?
So
what are the essential
I remember
elements?
when I wrote Cold Town, and I think it really changed my idea of what I should do in beginnings. I think the beginning of The Cruel Prince, which is also pretty intense and violent, like in some ways came out of my desire to write a beginning that did some of the work that Cold Town did, because I thought, oh, this is fun. This is, this buys me a lot of goodwill going forward because it's exciting. And it allows me to then slow down a bit, in the next part. And now I've lost the thread of the actual question, which was...
Oh, that's okay. No, I liked hearing that.
What was it?
I was asking, what are like the essential elements to get your novel off to a good start, the first chapter, the things that you now do to help?
I mean, I think the most important thing is that texture, like getting the texture right, getting it. Actually, the beginnings are the things that I can't go on past until I write right. It is like my one weird, like, I can't even really plot the book until I write the first chapter or the prologue or whatever it is. Like, I actually write that part over and over and over again until I get it feeling the way I want it to feel and get the characters feeling the way I want them to feel. And then I can kind of go on from there and tell the story. But with my adult novel, with Book of Night, I wrote maybe 15 different first chapters because I could not get it right. And I, at some point, was on a writing retreat with my friend Kelly Link, and each day she would read the new chapter that I had written and be like, "Okay, good job. Looking forward to chapter 2 tomorrow." And she would go to bed, and at night I would write another chapter 1, and she would wake up, and I would be like, "Look, a new one," and she would be like, "Okay, good. This one also good. Chapter 2 tomorrow." And then it was just a cycle. I just wrote them because I feel like it needs to feel right to me. It needs to feel like how I want the whole book to feel.
Hi, my name is Kaya Freitz, and I'm currently in the studio recording Heart's Gambit by J.D. Mayall. Chapter 1. Emma Baldwin. Harlem, 1943. When the moonlight hits the circus tents, they bleed. Ruby drops turn to rose petals before raining down on the audience. A symbol. That's all anybody wants. Something that feels bigger than them, no matter the city, no matter the time. Ma always said this when we were fortifying the fabric together, using our hands to imbue the crimson silk with our gifts. Something magical, something beautiful. And if we remind them that we're the best black circus on the circuit in the process, What's the harm? Oohs and ahs ripple as the crowd begins to file into the big top. They settle in their seats and prepare for the show as that bloody rain begins. Find Heart's Gambit wherever you get your audiobooks.
How do you avoid the saggy middle and keep it engaging all the way through?
I think one thing that I realized is that there are a couple of gear shifts in a book, and that they being aware that often they feel like hitting a wall when you come up to them. So, we sort of think of the first act to the second act as being, an important shift. And it obviously is important in and of itself, but it's also important to be aware that everything, like the pacing changes and the work you're doing changes, because moving from setup to playthrough is a really big shift. And then again, in the middle, there's a gear shift where you're going from ramping up to sort of, okay, we're up, and now what do we do? And so thinking of each part as having a different pace, a different tone, and a different purpose, I think is really helpful. And I think it's also helpful to be aware that when you hit those, you often are going to feel like you're hitting a wall, because the thing that you were doing and that you sort of had gotten, okay, this is how it goes, is now not true. Now you must do something else with the book.
Love that. And how do you tie up the loose ends and create a satisfying ending?
So I've been trying a new thing, and I anybody who has in any way followed me talking about writing will know that I always say, do not write the way I write, because I am constantly frustrated with my process. I am a inveterate going back and rewriting before I'm done. Bad idea, can't stop, won't stop. And I am often super frustrated with how I go through. But new plan, with my new book, I decided I was going to try to figure out the ending first. A thing which always had seemed impossible to me, because I had thought it was contingent on the plot, which of course I changed many, many times over the course of writing. But I have come to realize that the ending really isn't about that, because it's always about the characters. So my new plan is to come up with the endings first.
Ooh.
And then write toward them. And I've done it a total of once. But if I do it again, then I believe it will be my new process. But I mean, all of the loose threads, all of the making stuff satisfying, to me, 90% of that is done in revision. Like, the idea that a person could do all of that work in one draft is asking, to me, too much of yourself. You're going to be able to get it to the end, and then you're going to say, okay, what are the parts I did wrong? Where are the threads I left, right? And, it's going back over that. It's having a great, ideally group of readers that you can trust, and that, who you read for, you got to do your, right? But that you can trust to be like, this part really isn't working, however much you wish it was. And, and this part really is working. Don't mess with it.
Love that. Your world building is incredible. What tips can you offer aspiring writers on world building?
So books are essentially torture devices for the protagonist. If they have a fear, it's coming out. If they have a secret, we're going to be hearing about it. And in the same way, the world, and especially the magic, has to have a thematic connection to whatever is going on with the protagonist. It doesn't mean you have to create a magic system just for that, but I think it's really important to think about the magic and think about the world and think about the parts of it that you're going to explore as having to do with that protagonist and their journey, and making it, the hardest and worst possible moment for them. But especially thematically, like, what can you pull out of that world thematically that matches what you're doing with them thematically? So I think that's a big part of it. And I think the other big part is, realistically, if this was the world as we know it, how would people exploit that magic system? You've created it. Now play through it like you're a real person who knows how our world really works, because that's what's going to grant legitimacy to your world. We're not going to use the magic the way it's supposed to be used, right? We're going to look for the loopholes. We're going to look for the cheats. We're going to look for the ways we can make it the means to achieve the things that we all want in life.
Love that. Never heard that answer before either, by the way. Very well thought out. You're also known for writing great fae novels. What are the things people need to know when they're writing about fairies and fae? All that good stuff.
So, one of the things about writing about any kind of folkloric creature is that you have the advantage of having a lot of the world already built for you. Here is, a set of creatures that have the underpinning of many, many stories. And so going back to those original stories, going back to where people are going out into communities and saying, tell me the story of how you really met a goblin, and tell me, the story about what you saw and how the banshee, impacted your family. Because there are these sort of, folk tales that are coming from the tradition of people telling these stories to one another and then telling the stories to folklorists. And I think, respecting that original work, because it's giving you so much. And then, because this is oral tradition stuff, you're going to find stuff that contradicts, and you're going to have to pick and choose. And so from that, you take what you need and hopefully don't contradict anything, but take what you need and extrapolate from that what feels true. And I always say with fairies, it's oatcakes, not cupcakes. Right? Like you could feel tonally what the difference is between those two choices. If you're choosing cupcakes, we know what kind of fairies you have. They're tiny, they sparkle, they've got wings, and they're not from folklore. And so making those kinds of choices that fit the original folklore you're drawing from.
Awesome. What are some elements of a good vampire story?
Well, vampires represent a lot of anxiety. And so I think thinking about the specific kinds of anxiety around death that they are going to represent to you, like when you look back at, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s. And when you look back at the sort of big boom of vampire fiction that came out at that time, where you have Anne Rice and you have, Vampire the Masquerade, the game, and you have, Sonia Blue, and you have all of these sort of, vampire stories. They were hugely influenced by people's anxiety around blood and HIV. And so you see a fear of blood as infection, and it comes through even if people are kind of unaware of how much it comes through. And so I think thinking about what is here, like what are the underpinnings of these kinds of stories, because then you see later, like when we go into the aughts, we don't have those, like that anxiety isn't there, and you can see there is not the same emphasis on infection. We have different kinds of anxieties. We have anxieties around, I'm not even sure, like when I think about the early aughts, I'm not quite sure I fully understand what those vampires represent, but they represent a lot more comfort, right? There's a lot less fear. There's a lot less, they're not as awful, right? They're a kind of a representation of death we can embrace and find really beautiful and sort of, and find comforting in a way. And so I think thinking, what kind of vampire am I talking about? What kind of anxieties am I drawing from?
I love that. What advice do you have on maintaining tension?
Okay, so we are probably, as writers, a lot of us nice people, right?
Not
And the
really. We're
hardest
sadistic. We
thing,
like to kill our characters.
well, right. Do we though? Like, I feel like a lot of times, right? And a lot of writers, I think, are a little nervous in crowds. Often, people who are a little bit of people pleasers. A lot of, like, I mean, right? And
You'll see.
our instincts are not to make a fuss. Our instincts is to make things nicer and better. And so we have to fight our instincts. And so, right, some of that is writing it one way and then saying, how can I make this worse? Saying, how do I make this uncomfortable for these characters? How do I turn up the tension? I wrote a scene that persisted several drafts into Book of Night in which a guy almost killed another guy. Why not kill him? I don't know. It just seemed, too far. Really? And so I had to, I have to go back and say, okay, my instinct is not to make things tense. And so I need to be constantly aware that I have to fight that instinct to make it nice for these people, to make it better for them. My job is to make it worse.
It's so interesting to hear you say that because, like I said, your books are so tense, so full of tension all the way through that I would have thought that you enjoyed that your instinct would be to lean into that.
I mean, I enjoy it once I think of it because it's easier to write tension, right? We know when it's not quite there. We know when it's not, when we're writing something that's like, like, so when I get it, I'm super excited to write it, but my initial impulse, I think, is to solve things for people rather than making it worse for them.
And I love it because the tension keeps you tearing through. So kudos to you for getting past those instincts. Figure out which one I want to. Were there any tools or anything that helped you as far as when you're writing or just breaking into the business?
What kinds of tools?
Like tools or resources, like I don't know, like did you go on Query Tracker or was there any specific programs that might have helped you as far as researching things for your books?
Okay.
Or
I must sadly say, I am old enough that we mailed manuscripts, physical manuscripts. So a lot of the resources people have today, I did not have when I was starting out. Like I had the for real printed Writer's Digest. Love that thing. Does not exist in that form. That big, remember the big book of like publishing?
Yeah.
Or you're like, no, absolutely.
Publishers Marketplace.
Yeah, Publishers Marketplace. And like all of the old, like all of that stuff as it existed then. Yeah, I did have many of the, I believe, if I am not mistaken, Writer's Digest. You're right. They had like guides to different things. Am I accurate? Like guides to poison?
You're right. They had like agent guides and publisher guides and stuff.
Yeah, publisher's guide. Yeah.
Yep, they did.
But today, Pacemaker, I think, is fantastic. It allows you to, it's a program that's online. It allows you to put in like when your book has to be done. It breaks down your word count, which a lot of things do, but it allows you to add basically when you will be writing, when you won't be writing. It allows you to set up your word count in different ways so that you can you can start small and write more and more as you go. You can start with big chunks and then write less and less as you go. You can be a wild woman and say you can actually put in like randomize. I'm not sure who that person is. They terrify me, but like if you're, but it's a way of like actually figuring out word count. I think that is super helpful to me as a person who writes fairly slowly and who really needs to know how many words I need to hit. Scrivener, certainly everyone knows it, but it is super great to be able to see many different pieces of a story and be able to move around. I think those are the two ones that I use the most consistently.
Do you have any tips for new writers on achieving the longevity that you've had in publishing?
I mean, writing is like, I always say that I think writing success is getting to stay in publishing, right? Stay on the horse, because it is really hard to stay here. And I think we don't always think about that. Certainly I didn't when I thought about, selling my first book, which seemed like the biggest and most impossible goal. But then realizing like that, continuing to have a career is really, a challenge. And I think, a lot of it really is just continuing to show up and continuing to, put out work, and to know that you're going to have highs and lows. There are going to be periods of time where things are not working as well as you would like. Happily, the good thing about books not working as well as you like is almost no one ever knows they came out. So it often looks like success is success because no one knows this. But I think just being super aware that like your career is going to have dips. It's going to have, periods where you're frustrated, and just keep going and, find ways to get your stuff out there.
Love that. Best piece of writing advice you've ever heard?
So I think, so here's my best piece of writing advice. I'm not sure, like, write for your reader self and not your writer self. When I started out, I had so much like received wisdom about writing, and I wanted to write correctly. Like I wanted to do a good job and like write the way I was supposed to. And, not the way that would have people, I don't know, laughing at my work and saying it was bad, and I had so much of that in my head that I wasn't thinking about writing the correct way. And to me, the correct way is, if I was a reader, what would I enjoy most? Where are my reader pleasures here? What is the joy I would get out of this? And I think staying in that reader space, rather than saying, oh, I'm going to write a great book from a writer's point of view, like I'm going to write a book that will be much praised. Like that's not going to get you a good book. And it's definitely where I started. Like I really wanted to be, a good writer. And, now I want to be a writer that people enjoy reading.
Love that. Love that. The past few years have seen a rise in book bans. What are your thoughts on this?
It's awful. It's so awful. It is a way to try to control people. It's often a way to really isolate and marginalize people. It is cruel. And I am pleased to see all the ways that people have organized to try to stop it. But I have a background in library science. I almost finished a library degree, and like seeing the way that librarians in particular are being threatened as monstrous. Like these are people who are trying to do, good for all people and all kids. They're trying to get books in front of them that kids want to read. They're trying to be a resource. And the idea that they're being threatened with like actual arrest is it's like impossible to imagine. We are in a dystopian landscape. And, this part of it feels like a parody of all of the stories that I remember being told, right? When we're reading 1984, we're reading Brave New World, like we've already been informed that this is, we're reading Fahrenheit 451. Like we are in that space of like, I can't believe this is happening, because it feels ridiculous as much as it feels evil.
Very true. Does it make you scared on a personal note of like what could come, or? Do you think we'll come back to our senses by the next major election as a country?
It makes me scared for my son, to be in public school at a time when I'm not sure what is going to happen to federal public school funding. Like it makes me scared, just to think what the kind of environment he's growing up in. And I mean, I like your question, but Lord, I don't know.
Yeah.
From your lips, right?
Yeah.
To the gods.
Exactly. We can only hope and pray for improvement. But you're right. It is pretty scary right now. My other gig, I work in a library.
Oh my God.
And they've given us all these new rules on what we can and can't put up. Like for example, we can display queer books, but not by themselves. I can't just put a queer book on the end cap in the young adult section. But if I'm doing a display on like Valentine's, I can have like queer representation with the other books, but I can't have queer representation alone. And then like we had a person from corporate come to the library, and I did a Black History Month display, and I like printed out and laminated book covers and put it above the display with the books. And they took down the Hate You Give, the laminated one that I made, and removed the book from my display and replaced it with another book, with a fantasy book.
So awful.
Yeah. So
that's such a great book.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, it's also a really well-known book, and having kids see a book that they are like, oh, I have heard of that, is huge.
Right.
Because we often, right, as kids, we're like, which one? And so like, I'm so sorry. Like, and also that is what's so scary.
The crazy time. Crazy time. What are you working on now? What's up next for you?
I'm writing the sequel to my adult book, called, this one is Thief of Night. So it's the sequel to Book of Night. And I just turned it in for copy edits. So I'm excited. You have me with most of my brain back.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. Where can people connect with you?
I am on Instagram as probably Holly Black, but maybe Black Holly. I don't remember which. And I have a website, which is blackholly.com.
And is there anything you wanted to add that we didn't cover?
I mean, just that, I know that one of the great difficulties when you are beginning as a writer is that it feels like there is such a huge gulf between where you are and where you want to be. I know for me, I promised myself I would never forget how that felt, how it felt so impossible, and everybody always said, okay, you have to believe in yourself. If you believe in yourself, but I didn't. I didn't know anybody who'd ever sold a book or who had a career in the arts. Like I didn't and I always you don't need to do anything but do the work. You don't need to believe it's going to work. You don't need to think anything at all. You just need to show up every day and keep working on your book. And if you are, planning on sending it out, to mainstream publishers, send it out to agents, send it out, like just slowly do the thing. You don't have to believe it'll work. Just do it.
And my book debuts next year. Any personal advice for a debut?
Oh my God. Okay. So wait, what's your book?
Heart's Gambit. It's with Wednesday Books. Yeah.
I'm so excited. I was going to ask you. Ooh, all right. This looks amazing.
Thank you.
Is that your cover? I see a. Is your cover?
I haven't seen my cover yet. So
I don't know what this is then. What am I looking at? There's something I got stills of something. Maybe you made it as a trailery thing?
Is it on Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a little mock trailer.
A trailery thing? That looks great. All right. So, I mean, the hardest thing about the debut year, right, is that you're going into it super anxious because it feels like this is the thing, right? It's gonna come out and it's either, you feel like, okay, I've been rolling these dice forever, right? And now what did I roll? But, whatever happens, this is just one book and it's just the release. Are you releasing in hardcover?
Mhm.
So it's just the hardcover release. I will tell you that when Tithe, my first book, came out, we still had Barnes and Noble and we had Barnes and Noble and Borders, and Borders didn't even take the hardcover. Only Barnes and Noble did. So it was like and that book, it did not do anything until the paperback came out. And like it has gone on to do really well, but it didn't do that way in a hardcover. And at the time, like I thought, this is what it is. And so I will just say, like, first of all, of course it's important. Everything is important, but also it is not going to, whatever doesn't work doesn't mean anything. Like, you still have a lot of that book's life to go, as well as obviously your career to go. So don't think this is it. Oh, this is all or nothing right here, this debut week, because I think there's a lot of push towards that. And I think that, I don't know if you're going to join one of those groups.
I have.
What?
So we're all scared together.
So you're all scared together.
Yeah.
The great things about those groups is I know people who've met tons of friends, like long-term, community friends in them. The bad thing is I think that there's a huge amount of sorting happening in them, where people sort of compare what they have, like what resources they're being given, how their publisher is treating them, and sort of try to figure out in advance who's going to win publishing. But you can't know until those books are coming out. When the books come out, the public will have a whole different view of everything. So try not to get too concerned about where you sit with other writers. You're never, until the book is out, that is the mark of what happens.
Were you in a debut group?
When my Tithe came out in 2002, YA, nobody wanted to be in YA. I went to a SCBWI conference, and I remember they were told to, I guess, network in line, and in lines everywhere. And I was in line for the bathroom, and a woman turned to me and she said, "What do you write?" And I said, "Oh, YA." And she turned around to talk to somebody else. It just wasn't what it was. In 2002, it wasn't at all the genre it was. And it was fun to see it grow. It was interesting. A huge part of what changed in YA is Barnes and Noble moving the YA section out of the block, that children's area, guarded by the bears or whatever. And because teenagers were not willing to go in there, and adults definitely weren't. And so once it got moved out, you saw a really big shift in who was purchasing YA. And that made a big difference.
How did the option process work?
Oh, the option part. Are you out? Are you on submission option wise?
No, I'm talking about yours.
I'm curious. So, I mean, optioning is the process of, so someone comes, often a producer, sometimes a studio, and essentially they rent time to try to put together a TV show or a film.
Mm-hmm.
And so they pay you a little bit of money, and sometimes even less than a little bit. And they then spend time finding writers and directors and people who want to, showrunners or talent, who they can then attach and hopefully get the project greenlit. At that point, they buy your rights, which is where the more significant money is. And, and usually this is all set up. But so if you, for instance, see that your favorite, book has been optioned, you think, okay, great, when's the movie? Well, until it's purchased, like until the rights are purchased and it's greenlit, no movie. And it's a long for even at its fastest, it's a pretty long process with a lot of starts and stops. I remember when we were setting up Spiderwick for the movie, we had a period of sort of everything was moving forward, everything was looking good, and I was driving back from New York and Tony, who's my collaborator on Spiderwick, called me, and he said that he had gotten a call from our agents, and it was on. It was greenlit. It was happening. So I stopped at our local liquor store, Liquors 44, and I pointed to a dusty bottle of Cristal up above the cash register, and I said, I want that. And they said, that's expensive. And I was like, give it to me. And I brought it to Tony's house, and we opened that bottle, and the agent called back and said, it's back off.
Oh.
And I was like, how do I get this cork back in? But then, a short time later, it was greenlit, stayed greenlit, and we did have the film. But it was it's a real back and forth process, and, you're often not really sure what's going to happen.
Did you get to go to the premiere? Was there a premiere for it?
I did. I went to the LA premiere and the New York premiere, and I got to, I got to bring my parents to the New York premiere, and then the TV show, the Spiderwick TV show, I got to bring my son to the set, and that was really fun. Awesome. So I got to take pictures of him with the actors, and he got to see what it was happening. He was kind of bored, but it was really fun for him to walk around and see it.
That's exciting. That's fun. So you've already reached the peak of everything that, most of us dream about. So what mountain are you looking to climb next? What would you like to see happen in the future?
I think the thing I want most of all is the thing I was talking about. I want to stay on the horse, right? I want to keep putting out books that people care about. I want to keep putting out books that people talk about. And, I want to remain in the conversation.
And you will, because you're fabulous.
That was very kind of you to say.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. I really, really, truly do. And I'm going to harass you for a blurb, but you can feel free to deny me if you want to. But I love your books.
Great.
I love your books. And my second book that I'm working on now to hopefully go on Sub 4 is Vampires. And you are a huge inspiration in the vampire market because, like I said, I absolutely love start to finish, just tension all the way through. And, so yeah. But either way, like I said, you're an inspiration and you're a talent, and it's been so much fun to talk to you. And I was excited about this one. I interview a lot of people, but I was actually excited about this one. I was talking to my kids about it all day. I was like, and don't come down here bothering me.
Well, yes, so Vampire Gambit. I want to read it. And congratulations on starting a new book. That's so hard, right? When you're like, I made it, I wrote a book, I have sold my book, and then you're like, now what? And they're like, write another book, and you're like, another one. Another one. You know how hard it was to write that first one. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Have a great day. Tell your son and everybody I said hi. Be safe. See you later. Well,
That wraps up today's Craft Chat Chronicles with JD Mayor. Thanks for joining us. If you liked the episode, please comment, subscribe, and share. For show notes, writing workshops, and tips, head to jdmayor.com. That's jdmayor.com. While you're there, join JD's mailing list for updates, giveaways, and more.
Are you struggling to keep your writing organized? Trust me, I've been there. I want to introduce you to Scrivener, the ultimate program for all writers. You can outline, draft, and even edit all in one place. Whether it's your next novel, screenplay, or even thesis, Scrivener helps you stay focused and finish strong. Scrivener adapts to your workflow. From your first draft to the final edit, it's a writer's secret weapon. Click on the link below and get started on your Scrivener writing journey today.